The reactors are General Electric reactors. They have Siemens controllers. Siemens is a German company that run all of the reactors and open and close valves and pump water and just keep that whole thing operating. And 90 minutes after the cooling stops in the cooling ponds, which are on top of the reactors, there are 7 cooling ponds at Fukushima, with 6 of them on top of the reactors. And there are 600,000 spent fuel rods from 40 years of operating those reactors. A spent fuel rod weighs about 1,200 pounds. It has over 1,300 isotopes in it, and it is exactly what is produced when a nuclear bomb explodes. So, nuclear weapons testing injected those dangerous fission products high into the atmosphere, and 85% of that radioactive detritus or dust or whatever it is, byproducts, is still circulating up in the upper atmosphere. It's safely kept away from us. But 4 of those reactors blew up from hydrogen explosions, and the fuel rods went shooting high into the air, and that has poisoned all of North America. And I mean the west coast of Canada, the west coast of the United States, and the west coast of Mexico. That's the food basket for North America. And this isn't at levels like bomb testing. This is at levels like Chernobyl release close to the ground and has poisoned the whole world. And now we have something that is at least 10 times worse, many times worse than Chernobyl. Because the reactor at Chernobyl that caught on fire was half the size of the small reactor in Unit 1, and it was mostly fuel rods that were uranium that burned instead of the spent fuel rods that represent a real nuclear war that burned at Fukushima. And also, because of that, the whole top third of Honshu, all the way up to the tip of Honshu, that is uninhabitable now. It is 3 times more radioactive on the ground than after Chernobyl. It's uninhabitable. It's over 3,000 becquerels per second of extremely dangerous radionuclides that are decaying across that whole top third of Honshu. And when the U.S. military evacuated Kanto, which is that light blue area, it's Tokyo and Yokosuka, which is the biggest U.S. Navy base in Japan, where the self-defense forces have their ships, the Japanese ships, and a very wide region where also agriculture is done. When the U.S. military bailed out of that area, I knew it was really bad. So, Japan has 55 reactors in a country the size of California. There are multiple reactors in each power plant, and I've been in some of them. I've investigated and inspected them. The most dangerous nuclear power plant is, I think it's this one. It's, no, it's down here, one of these. It's called Hamaoka. Now, Japan is extremely dangerous to choose as a site to put any nuclear technologies, because Japan is sitting, it's an island arc, sitting on top of 4 tectonic plates. So the Philippine plate is moving north, the Pacific plate is moving west and trying to subduct under China, with Japan bobbing on top of it. The North American plate is moving south, and the China plate is moving east. So it's a terrible, terrible place. It would be like trying to crawl on top of a gunny sack with about 5 big hogs in it, all wiggling and jumping around and pushing each other. And I'd like to see you or me or anyone try to stay on top of that gunny sack. So that's basically the tectonic setting of Japan. And the Hamaoka plate is near the junction of 3 plates. I was able to get the Tokyo Electric Power Company map, which has the faults and the strata, the geologic layers or rock types and everything on it, because that's what TEPCO submitted to the Japanese government in order to operate, for the license to operate Hamaoka. So I went to Hamaoka and I had a press conference there. And then I went to the prefecture headquarters where the governor and the prefecture government operates, and I had another press conference there. And I had walked all around Hamaoka the day before and collected rocks and took pictures and observed the intake and exhaust pipes. They're huge. They're twice as wide as this room. They consume huge amounts of water for the cooling systems. And I held up the map and showed all the reporters what it looked like, and I said, can you see the faults on this map? Can you see how the reactors are carefully placed between the faults? They said, yeah. And I said, instead of the rocks lying flat like they're supposed to, they're standing on their sides. And I said, this is not a safe place to build a nuclear power plant. And they said, but TEPCO told us it was safe. So I took a baggie out of my backpack and I held up a baggie and I said, these are the rocks that those reactors are sitting on. And I took a rock out and I crumbled it like sugar. And they said, we're all going to write stories about this. And all of them wrote articles that were in the Japan newspapers the next day. Even the most conservative one, the Yomiuri News, which was started by a military war crimes character who was very pro-nuclear power, and he used the Yomiuri News to promote nuclear power in Japan and sell it to the public. Even their reporter wrote an article about it. So here we have a country that is just an accident waiting to happen. And I wrote a 2004 article for the Japan Times after the Hamaoka visit, and I hope all of you will read it. It's in English on the internet, and it's called Japan's Deadly Game of Nuclear Roulette. Now the tragic thing is that every nuclear power plant can be converted to natural gas, because all that reactor does is boil water to turn the turbines to produce electricity. You can take the reactor out, put a gas burner in, produce 8 times more energy, much cheaper, eliminate the environmental hazard of the emissions, because all of the radiation from operations every day goes up the stack. And it ends up in all the fields and the food and in the water, drinking water, and in babies' teeth. I've collected 6,000 baby teeth from children living around nuclear power plants in the U.S. with a small group of scientists. Dr. Ernest Sternglass is one of them, and he helped to convince the Senate to sign the Partial Test Ban Treaty in 1963. I also collected baby teeth in Japan, in Tokyo, and the radiation levels were the same as for children living around nuclear power plants in the U.S. The 2 babies that had the highest strontium-90 levels in their baby teeth were born in Washington, D.C. So, nuclear power is not compatible with life, with welfare, with good health, but it sure is compatible with bankers, and that's why we have it. And the other reason we have it is because Queen Elizabeth, I call her Queenie, owns all of the mineral rights to 27 countries, the British Isles, and many territories, the Commonwealth. And she even owns the mineral rights to the international maritime limits, which are 200 miles offshore. So all the wind farms, the BP oil platforms offshore, they all belong to her personally. She owns over 35 trillion, I'm sorry, she owns land worth over $35 trillion. She's the richest person in the world. And she has huge, huge uranium deposits in Canada, in Australia, in other countries. And it's completely worthless dust unless you have an industry, even a fraudulent and corrupt industry, that gives you a way to sell it. That's nuclear power.